Everybody
So,
got it.
all right, well, let's get started. So, welcome back to another episode of Qumulex Radio. I am Josh, joined by my co-host, co-pilot, and friend, Aaron Newman. And we have two very special guests today from Farpointe Data. We have Tom Piston, and we have Shep Sheppard. How you doing, guys?
Doing well.
Doing great,
Thank you so
Josh.
much, guys.
Great to be here.
Yes, really appreciate you coming on. And usually the way that I like to start these off is just to give you just a couple moments, and I don't know whoever would like to speak on it, but just for anybody that's not aware of Farpointe Data and what it is that you do, if you trap them on an elevator at ISC West coming up soon, what would you say about Farpointe Data?
Well, I'll go ahead and go for you, Josh. Farpointe Data is very, very simple, actually. Farpointe Data is an RFID reader and credential manufacturer, and that's pretty much all we do. We make readers and credentials for deployment with physical access control systems. We don't make controllers. We don't make software, although obviously if we have a need, say on a program or something like that, maybe, but for the most part, that's it. We're very, very simple. The reader and credential company for use in your access control deployments. Tom, you can.
Well, I think the one thing that sets Farpointe apart, because there are other reader and credential manufacturers out there that we compete against, okay, is the way that we go to market. And Farpointe goes to market in North America, through the OEM channel. We get our product to market through valued partners like Qumulex. We sell to Qumulex, and then Qumulex gets our product to its integrators. Its integrators get it to the end user. And so we really value that relationship. We don't have a separate sales team that's pushing the product through, say, distribution or even in direct ways. So we really need that relationship with companies like Qumulex.
And we feel that it creates value because, and what I say by value is that it creates value to the Qumulex end user, in the fact that, again, this is not just a reader that was, chosen, let's say, but, something that, so to speak, let's say, loosely endorsed by the manufacturer. In other words, by going this route, it's kind of like you get, double the support that you would get, because, you didn't just choose a Farpointe Data reader, but it was recommended and purchased, let's say, through the system manufacturer as well. So, there's nobody pointing fingers saying, oh, it's them, or it's, again, it creates a better, I think, service environment, or support environment, I should say.
No, I like all that. And, like you said, full disclosure that we are partners. So the Farpointe Data, for those watching that may be a customer, is available on our price list. And I've had a great relationship with these guys even before my time here at Qumulex. So product we're proud to offer. But so wanted to jump into a couple of topics here. And the first one would be, we're hearing a lot over the last several months, maybe last year, about there's the flipper and the concern with weekend, and a lot of discussion about, what type of other frequency format may emerge as the predominant, as the most popular moving forward, so that it is more secure. OSDP is mentioned a lot. So anyone that has looked at any of the OEM price lists that support Farpointe has probably noticed that you have many of your readers, most of them, in fact, I believe, have a dash OSDP model. Can you talk a little bit more about, what that means and how that works?
Huh?
OSDP, Open Supervised Device Protocol. That is SIA's new communication standard from the reader to the access control panel. And SIA is pushing OSDP primarily for its increased security. A lot of people don't realize that in open WGAN transmission, and WGAN is what we've been using for a long, long time in access control. Typically, we're sending a 26-bit WGAN output to the access control panel. Could be 36, could be 37, but it's being sent in the clear. All right. So there is a risk. Some people don't perceive it as a big risk. Others perceive it as a large risk that an individual with malicious intent could access those WGAN lines. And there's a very, very small device that can be put onto those WGAN lines. It can siphon the power, and then it goes on the two data lines. And every time a credential is presented to the reader, it sends that 26-bit, 36-bit, 37-bit WGAN transmission to the panel, but now it's going through that little tap, and that tap records that card data. Now, it doesn't matter how secure the card was, okay? It could be DeskFire EV2, DeskFire EV3. It could be something from one of my competitors, HID iClass, another great technology, even though I don't sell it. Once that weekend transmission is in the clear, you can harvest that data. And if, say, I were the one who put that tap on there, I can take a Bluetooth connection to that tap on my phone, and I can see every card that's ever been, card fob, every credential that's been sent through that tap. And I could randomly replay one. Okay, I could just pick, hey, I'm going to replay this one. Okay, or I can maybe take that back to my computer. I can analyze all of the data, and I can look for patterns. Is there a certain facility code ID combo that gets used anytime during the day? Could be 3 in the afternoon, could be 3 in the morning, might be a security guard. Okay, maybe I want to duplicate that particular facility code and ID number. If I happen to know the credential that's being used, I can, maybe go get one. And now I can do a backdoor attack into that facility. OSDP encrypts that transmission and makes that attack not possible. All right. If you're using OSDP the right way. We've seen a number of people who, to make things easier, do a clear channel. Hey, I'm using OSDP. You're in the weekend that they replaced it with. So like anything, you've got to do it the right way. And then
I think it's also important. I think it's, I'm
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you, Tom, but Josh, I think it's also important too, because you did mention earlier, you mentioned the flipper, and then you went into OSDP. And I think that, again, and this, by the way, happens quite a bit, is that, because of the issue right now with card security on the 125 kilohertz proximity side, and this is where the flipper comes out, is that you can take an existing proximity card, a 125 kilohertz proximity card, and you can clone it. In other words, make a copy of it, using this flipper. And of course, that basically brings out that vulnerability of the technology 125 kilohertz. 13.56 megahertz contactless smart card, at least, is one remedy to that. In other words, a card that you can put an encryption key, a symmetrical encryption key on, that matches on both the card and the reader. And this is for that is for that vulnerability. In other words, the card security vulnerability, you're entering in an encryption key. What Tom described as OSDP, of course, again, is between the reader and the controller,
Right.
a form of supervision, so to speak, but also that secure or what do they call it, Tom, is secure transmission, or secure channel, which is really, again, as Tom mentioned, the key element of OSDP is to provide that security, again, between that, but they are quite separate. It's kind of weird, because I think the confusion goes back to the way we use weekend as a terminology. It's
OSDP offers some other features that some see as a benefit, others kind of go, who cares? Okay.
Exactly,
One of the benefits of OSDP is that you can wire the reader as far as 4,000 feet away from the panel. Wow, that's great. But as my friend Shep often points out, who the heck wants 4,000 feet of wire? So it may or may not be a great option, but you can do that, is the point.
Your customer's not going to be all that excited about the cost of 4,000 feet of wire, but
you can also daisy chain readers off of a single reader port. So you can reduce the panel footprint that you need. So that's another thing. But the real benefit of OSDP is that secure channel, that encryption of the transmission. And then as OSDP develops, we will be able to start updating readers in the field. So instead of, say, a reader needs new firmware, where we might have had to have the reader come back into the factory and inject it with new firmware, we'll then be able to inject that firmware through those OSDP lines. So there's some cool things coming. We've seen a number of integrators adopt it and run with it. Others, not so much, because there's a learning curve. All right. And as we've recently been taught through some great sales training that we've been going through, is that people don't switch to your product. We all sell something that our customers are already buying. We just have to convince them to buy ours instead of theirs. Okay. In this case, they still need readers. Why switch from weekend to OSDP? Well, unless weekend is causing them enough pain, they're not going to go through the hassle of learning how to do it. Okay. So part of it is educating the dealer and the end user to the pain that weekend can cause. All right. For the most part, it's not causing that pain, but we have to educate them on what the vulnerabilities are if they continue to use those weekend transmissions.
It's like the pain they could experience.
They could.
Maybe not the pain they're getting right now, but
right.
Yeah, probably is right. Is that the new rule? Of course, we always heard of no pain, no gain. It's now no pain, no sale, or no upgrade. Because again,
well,
you really have to conceptually.
Why do I want to do this?
Yeah, and if you've never experienced that kind of attack, well, then it's like, well, wow, we've never had anybody tap into our data lines before.
And then we sometimes get asked, well, can you give me an example of where that's happened? And I can't. Now, maybe if I started researching, I could find it as somewhere, but I don't have any
You
document.
know that James Bond movie you saw?
Oh, yeah, there's that.
You know.
Well, and I actually agree with that. I think that where it may change, and I would kind of always use this analogy of Rick's accounting office, who has a copier and everybody has a laptop they take home, and I don't think that they suspect anyone's going to go through all this James Bond trouble to clone anything. They'll throw a brick through the window, and then some combination of their intrusion panel and their cameras and so forth. And really, it was my argument against the idea that Wiegand should be outlawed somehow. Nobody should be allowed to make it and things like that. And I push back on that, because you have customers that just they're not worried about it because their environment does not lend itself to that. Now, I'm starting to put a caveat in my argument there for the survival of Wiegand, because I think my mom has a flipper and she doesn't even know how to turn her TV on. I mean, these things are everywhere.
I had an interesting experience with Flipper. I was doing a few months ago, I was doing a training for one of my other OEM partners. They were hosting a large dealer training. So I went there, and as part of the training, I was giving them some education on readers and credentials, in general, and then of course Farpointe specifically. But during a break, one of the technicians there had a Flipper Zero, and so we were watching him do it. So I gave him a prox card, no problem. Give him a MyFair card. That's 1356. No problem. That's an older technology. So even at 1356, you've got to make sure you're current on the technology. Then I gave him one of my DeskFire cards. He goes, yep, I got that one too. I said, no, you don't. You've got the card serial number. That's unencrypted. I would have expected you to get that. I want you to find facility code 115 and whatever the ID number happened to be. I don't recall what it was. And of course, he couldn't. Okay. Right. So the flipper can't get in everywhere. All right. But it's important to make sure that you're using the most current technology. All right.
Well, that you're also deploying it in the correct fashion too, Tom, because and Tom brings out an incredible point there, because for many years, and I had the opportunity to go overseas, and of course, we would get knocked in North America. It's like, oh, you Americans and your proximity readers, and of course, while they're all switching over to 1356, and we switched over to contactless smart cards so many moons ago. Yet then you dig into it a little bit and find out that just for the ease of it, because you have to understand that when you go to an encrypted solution, when you go to an encrypted key, it is going to be proprietary to that manufacturer. That is one thing where I think that from a standpoint of proximity, and maybe the reason for some of the pushback or the reluctance for people to switch is because when you go to that encrypted card, again, your sourcing for those cards becomes singular. In most cases.
I mean, the supply chain issues during COVID showed that there were.
But this is exact. Oh, absolutely. But as a result of this, that you found that many of the early deployments of 1356 were doing just that. They weren't using the technology to its fullest extent. They were using CSN or UID read, which is again an unsecure read. I mean, every 13.56 credential utilizes a CSN, a random CSN or UID number on the unsecure side. And because it's random, don't get me wrong, it's a pain in the butt, but you can use it as an ID. You can assign it through some softwares. You can assign that as your ID. And, call it the path of least resistance or whatever. But for many moons, when people were moving to 1356, just to check off the box and to say that they weren't using procs, they were using 1356 readers. But again, not using the encryption key, just using UID. In fact, I've heard horror stories before about sites where, again, to save money, rather than issuing a card, they were using a card that they already had, like a credit card or something that, again, had a UID number on it that they could, enrollment read in as an ID number for, in this case, it was for students. It was a college university that they didn't want to issue cards. They figured, well, the students already got at least something they can use. So it's like, you got to be kidding me. But you unfortunately do see it on occasion, maybe call it unregulated or whatever you want. But so Tom is 100% right. I mean, the best technology in the world, unless you deploy it or you deploy it correctly, is not going to give you the full extent of what you actually were using it for in the first place.
No, that makes total sense. But I mean, do you think with Flipper, and I think I saw another one, Aaron may remember, I don't remember the name of it, but it's becoming more and more popular. People are buying these things like crazy off Amazon,
Yeah.
off Facebook. I mean, do we see like a more urgency now where maybe in the past, I think maybe people don't want to sell the better equipment to their customer, better
I
being maybe
think
not
that's
the best
helping
term,
drive
but do you
it.
think that that's saying, okay, now
Yeah.
where this used to be kind of a James Bond situation where unless you're a bank or a school or maybe a certain type of an environment where you think there might be someone who would really go through the efforts,
Sure.
maybe now this is motivating people because,
That
hey,
is
look,
helping to
anybody.
drive it. And I've got a meeting coming up with a large end user in the Southeast next week that I've already done a meeting with the integrator who's helping to make that transition. Now, we've been trying to educate them for years to make the transition from 125 kilohertz procs, and they finally come to terms with it. The security director has finally read enough articles about the vulnerabilities of proximity, and wanted a plan on how to move forward. And we're putting together a plan for them that's going to be able to make this possible. And it is things like the flipper. He referenced reading about card cloning and how easy it is to do. That's making him realize that he needs to upgrade the security, and he needs to do it faster rather than slower. So he's getting his IT department involved because apparently their budget is dwarfs the security budget, but security is also part of IT. So it's going to be an interesting meeting that we're going to have next week, and I'm very hopeful. And I think whether they use my solution or my competitor's solution, because there are other ways they could go than what I'm going to propose. But at the end of the day, they're going to make the transition to the more secure technology, and it's a good thing for them. And it is things like the stories on the flipper and things like the flipper that has helped to motivate him.
Although I would dare say that I think perhaps that some of the, at least a pretty good percentage of the flipper sales are probably internal to the security industry, where, our own personnel are buying the flipper so that they can go into that proximity site as, I guess, the aha moment and say, hey, listen, I can sell you something here. And, so it's funny because you do hear stories about salespeople for different dealer integrators going out into known proximity deployments from their competitors and saying, hey, look, let me show you how easy you can clone that card, and you should be buying from me. I hope it's not a kill the messenger type moment. I guess they're figuring it's not, but you do hear stories about that, about how we're kind of going after our own industry, and I guess policing ourselves is pretty good, but I think we need to be careful with that as well, because you do see videos as well online, and I think that's a little bit dangerous. And I think more so, I mean, listen, identifying the fact that we have a problem with 125 kilohertz procs is one thing. I think the other thing is, looking for the solution, which is 13.56 and or mobile, by the way. Mobile is another a great option because it is secure. In fact, we provide an option to go from proximity to mobile. But I think as well, though, that, because of some of these larger proximity deployments out there, Josh, you're going to see people reluctant to make that change because, it's what we call the pain in the butt factor. If you got like 75,000 proximity cards out there, it's not so much changing the readers. That's the easy part. It's changing, rebadging everybody. And a lot of times people just throw their hands up. So, I think that in any kind of scenario like that, where for whatever reason, people are not going to make that switch, I think it's also important that we educate them on the technology and at least provide some kind of solution as to what they can do to firm it up. And a perfect example might be like, say, on the perimeter going to a combo keypad setup. Like if you're going to deploy proximity or you're going to still have it out there, at least make the people that are carrying those cards do a card plus pin, so that you've got some semblance of security, or at least enhancing the security, and it's not just, say, a free road in. And in doing so as well, you may even identify the clone cards, is that because you may find it anyway, although I'm assuming if somebody gave up their card for cloning, they'd probably give up their pin too. But again, it's just something that you can do to kind of firm it up a little bit if people aren't going to make that transition, or they don't have the budget for it. I mean, what can you provide for them?
Is there instances of salespeople actually going out and using the flipper to clone and then take it back and show that, hey, this needs upgrading?
I talked to many salespeople for integrators who that's part of their strategy. They'll say, hey, give me your prox card. They'll make a copy and say, here, go open that door with the card that I just made. and it opens some eyes. Now, some people go, I don't care, because they still, their perceived risk is still low. It goes back to the brick through the door. Okay.
Right.
Who's really going to do this to try and get into my facility? Okay. I see the card cloning risk in certain verticals and less so in other verticals. What's a vertical where it's a risk? Condos. Okay. What have I got in my condo if I live in a condo? Well, I got a pool. I might have a gym. Okay. What if my buddy Shep, I make a copy of my condo card and say, hey, come use the gym anytime you want. I don't care. Okay. Now we've got somebody who's not supposed to be in that building using the services that the condo residents are paying for. Okay. Nobody pulled a fast one on him or on me rather. Okay. I did it willingly because I'm trying to, help out a buddy. Or what if I'm using a health club that uses proximity technology to allow me in? Okay. I make a copy of the card. I give it to my buddy Shep and he's giving me half the membership and they're getting cheated. Okay.
Yeah, that's like theft of service. It's theft of service is probably theft of service is more, I think certainly something more eye-opening. I mean, on the condo side, I think some of that is also self-inflicted, because, a property manager might look at somebody like, Tom Piston and his wife, live in an apartment or condo, 205. And, and we give them as part of their agreement, we give them 2 credentials, one for him, one for her. Oh my God, they have somebody come visit. They want, hey, can we get an extra credential? Okay, our daughter's going to come live with us for a little while. She's going through college or something, or whatever the case may be. And they're like, sure, we'll charge you $100. We're going to, $100 for that extra thing. And it's like, wow, people are like, gosh, I didn't think it would be that much, or it shouldn't be that much. Or maybe they even know, wow, at work, I know that these things only cost, so much money. But, again, it's almost like you're forcing people to go out there and make a bad decision by going out there and at least even to investigate whether or not they can clone the card or copy the card, much the way they might cut a key back in the old days, right? So, and this, of course, I think has also provided a lot of exposure to that problem. In fact, I think a lot of it was actually born out of that vertical, because I don't think really people are like, running around going, hey, how am I going to penetrate that business over there? Unless, of course, it happens to be like Fort Knox or something like that, which, would be somebody who you would expect to have that kind of knowledge. But, but it's interesting how, where this has all come from and the exposure, like you said. I mean, it's some people are using it as an opportunity. Hey, I'm going to show these people how vulnerable they are. And other people are, even with the, looking at it right in the face, are like, well, it's too expensive. We don't have the budget. I was just traveling through a major airport this weekend, and what did they have on the wall? They looked like Prox Pros to me. I mean, a 125 kilohertz Prox Pro with a keypad. That's not I-class. That's not 1356.
Hopefully not to a very secure area.
Well, one would hope, but I believe they were going down to jetways, so I don't know, man. I mean,
they're transitioning, guys. They're transitioning.
But I think that's akin to like, and really Josh and Aaron as well. He's like, there's a lot of Prox out there. That's why this is such a
noteworthy thing. Prox is still the workhorse of North America.
We had seen something. I was at a seminar last year where they actually showed up some numbers, from like metric producing companies like Reuters or whatever the case may be. And but the quotation that was provided, and much to the chagrin of the group that I was there with, which was a group of engineers and consultants and specifiers, was that the 125 kilohertz frequency went out the door last year at about 250 million, $250 billion of this technology still went out the door last year, with all the bad press, with all the vulnerability. So, but again, we know this as well of other technologies like MagStripe. I mean, look in your wallet right now. I'll bet you got at least 5 MagStripe cards in there. You may not be using them, but they're still deployed.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So, no, go ahead.
How have the high frequency cards, like their supply chain issues that were present a year or two ago, how are they looking today? Are they?
I think they've really, for the most part, smoothed themselves out. Farpointe Data, to our credit, we did not have those issues. Our lead times did stretch out from our historical norms. So instead of shipping within 3 days of an order, we were shipping within 15 to 20 business days of an order, which I was mortified to tell people until they go, oh my God, please send me the cards. So I guess we did pretty good.
If there were some card formats that we could have
smoothed out for everybody, it was only a matter of time.
Yeah. So if there were card formats that we could have produced during that time, believe me, because we it was kind of sad. I mean, but this is also spawning other things within the industry. We're seeing different technologies for maybe like more open platforms, open secure platforms as they may be, because again, I think, and born out of this supply issue, because, it's a shame when you've got a customer out there or even something that's been partially installed and, all they need to finish it is, the initial card database and they can't get it. And if anything, what this really did is it exposed the symbiotic relationship between, the readers and cards and the actual system. And how that, again, how that affects each other. And, because of an encryption key, when you can't help somebody, that it kind of stinks, because it's like, listen, but again, once we said, like, once you go that 1356 and you go to that encryption key, for the most part, it becomes a proprietary solution. And so if it's one company's, well, there's little that Farpointe can do for you if it's not ours, or vice versa on that matter. So I'm not.
Sure, and even if you have a manufacturer do an encryption key specifically for you, they're still the ones who did it. Okay.
Exactly. You got to get
Well, you can bring it to another manufacturer. That's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
So
and it's not, again, like Tom said, it's not just the key, it's also the configuration, how we produce data, how we send the data to you, that sort of thing. So, it can become more it's funny how the industry has changed, right? Because proximity, when it hit its heyday, when it first hit, what was about it? So open, so easy, so simple, right? You didn't even have to think about it, right? Pass-through solution. Think about it. If you think about it singularly, one of the primary reasons why a lot of your system manufacturers stopped making their own readers, because both Tom and I have worked for manufacturers back in the days, physical access control system manufacturers that made their own card technology, and you saw all sorts of crazy stuff out there. I mean, the original Wieg bar technology, but also we worked for a company that did transmissive infrared technology. People did variants of all these different types of things. But when RFID became the predominant technology, you saw a lot of companies give up that reader production, that reader engineering, and they just went with RFID, HID, or somebody else for that matter. So, it's funny. And in doing so, lost a lot of that identity as well at the door. Think about it. I mean, most people, when you interact with a physical access control system, you're not looking at the controller or the software, you're looking at the reader, and you're looking at your card. So, it's funny how this all went. And then, but all that ease and everything, again, through this vulnerability went away. Now we're going back to marrying the card to the reader. Who did that originally? Indala. Did they not?
I believe you.
Even with proximity, they did that back in the day. So, but they went away with it because, again, pass-through became more popular, simple, easy, but yes, it became vulnerable. And now we're back to marrying the card to the reader.
Well, certainly it's more vulnerable now just because other technologies have evolved to really take advantage of that. I'm sure that wasn't.
You can find different metrics out there, but 13.5.6 is definitely the preferred technology for new deployments right now.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Okay. Among most integrators, but there's just so much legacy procs out there that it still outsells everything else. All right.
Yeah, if you were to say to yourself, what's the percentage of greenfield opportunities versus retrofit opportunities? I mean, what would you say, Tom? I heard somebody tell me the other day, like 50-50.
Yeah, well, heck, I talked with an integrator yesterday. He said almost all of our business is takeovers. We do very little hunting of trying to, get new applications and pitch a brand new system. We're going after large enterprise customers. We want to go in there and take that over, maybe do a rip and replace. Okay, so then it would become a new installation if necessary, but they're really targeting the takeovers. And think to myself, I kind of feel bad for his OEM partners because how much new product is he really moving? He's just takes the hook, but that's a big strategy. So,
yes, your integration partner does not want to hear that.
No, it is very common, and I mean that is really a selling point on something like Mercury. We're an HID Mercury partner, and it's the idea that even if you moved on from Qumulex and wanted to use another product, it's open architecture. It's
but how many new Mercury panels does that move? None.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and I think that's part of the motivator for newer, better technologies and capabilities is to give the customer a reason to want to upgrade. But certainly that selling point is out there for many technologies, that you could use what you have and it's, a little bit less of a forklift, kind of an upgrade, but certainly everything ages out over time. And it sounds like with, some of the things like Flipper, which is no longer a friendly dolphin, as I remember in my childhood. It's
I found that the card and the reader, but maybe the card more so than the reader, seems to be one of the most misunderstood parts of the access control system, even by integrators that you think would know better. I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to people over the years that have been in this business. Hey, Tom, I need to quote on 1,000 cards. Okay, what do you need? Just standard 26-bit weekend. Okay, everything outputs 26-bit weekend. Damn, 26 weekend, 125 kilohertz procs, but that's not what it really means. Okay, 26-bit weekend is just what we spit out after the read has been made. Okay, but it could be a Deathfire EV2, it could be a MyFair, it could be a Pyramid prox, it could be a HID prox, it could be an AWID prox. They can all be 26-bit weekend.
Oh.
But so many people just don't understand that part of it.
Access card, you're right. You're absolutely right, Tom. Access cards are like that. I mean, most people, and again, going back to the supply issue, this exposed a lot of that because people would call us up and say, "Hey, Shep, I need 1,000 proximity cards," and you'd say, "Yeah, okay, wow, okay." Because when we hear proximity, we're thinking, "Oh, he means 125 kilohertz," but he didn't mean that. He just meant he didn't have to touch the card to the reader. So
Right.
he was using proximity as a descriptive rather than describing the technology. And so when you got into it and you started talking to them, said, "No, man, you don't need proximity. You need smart card. You need contact. In fact, you need this encrypted contactless COS card that I can't provide you." But you got me all excited at first because I thought it was gonna, but again, and it's funny because for the longest time, I mean, and Tom and I mean, I've been with Farpointe for 16 years, and Tom's with Farpointe over 10 years now, and you hear people talking about like just bastardizing a little bit the Wiegand terminology. Oh, I got hey, I need a Wiegand reader. Well, what kind? Or I don't think people will be talking about OSDP this way, but again, the supply chain issue really did expose a lot of people. We went down that road where people were saying the word commodity. Oh, cards are a commodity. And we'd say to them, that's not true. Maybe on the proximity side, you can almost make that a little bit. But the thing is, as soon as you go down that road, it doesn't work. And this is where this exposure, the encryption key changes all that. So
is there a play here for mobile where mobile addresses some of these concerns that are coming about?
I think so. I think for one, in the consultant specifier arena, they like mobile. They like mobile a lot. And they like mobile because of the security of it. In fact, they certainly do like mobile over proximity. So you don't see too many people out there having a problem. Now, we had heard some early adoption things about mobile. Like I think about maybe, 4 years ago, people were saying like in 5 years, mobile will be, 20% of the credentials you sell are going to be mobile credentials. I don't know if we've actually reached that yet. I think it's because there's so many different deployment styles that different manufacturers are using for their mobile. For example, some people are going annual licensing fee. In other words, credentials as a service type model, whereas Farpointe is more of a mimicking the card. So we're a procurement model. You buy our mobiles the same way, our credentials the same way that you would buy a hard credential or a card. But but again, it's that undeniable security coupled with the convenience of carrying the credential on your phone.
Yeah.
So
I've heard
I think you can
anecdotally.
make that case, and clonability, that it's not existent.
I've heard anecdotally from some of the integrators that I have the pleasure of working with, that they've received pushback from some of their commercial customers that their employees are resistant to putting a mobile credential on their personal phones. I can't document that. It's just anecdotal information.
I've heard that more than other as well. I've heard that more than other arguments, is that, when they get to that level, is that, pushback.
Is that along the lines of, if you're not going to pay for my cell phone, you shouldn't be calling me after hours on my cell phone? Or is that like that they think that they're being tracked?
And I suspect, although I can't confirm this, I suspect there's a subset of people who don't trust anybody for anything. And they're worried that once there's a credential on their phone, that their employer is going to be able to track places that they go.
Yeah.
They don't seem to be worried about any of the search engines tracking them. But no,
Right.
they know that this is identified to them. So I think part of it might be that. But again, I think the bigger part of it is, I pay for this, you don't. I'm just going to say no. It's just something they can stand up to.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, in a pure, let's say, mobile deployment where the company is paying for your phone, I think that there's definitely some good arguments to be made for it, though, because, I mean, Tom and I both use a corporate phone. We work for a company, we got a corporate phone. I don't know about you, Tom. I've had mine for almost 4 years now. So,
Yeah.
the cost of ownership in a procurement model is certainly going to be a little bit less. I'm certainly not going to tell them that I'm not going to put my phone on it or not. So, it's just a given. But also the corporate can dictate, how I get into the phone. In other words, is there a PIN number? Is there a biometric being used as well? And I think that creates an even more secure scenario because first off, I mean, most people don't share their phones. So, unlike a fob or a card, I'm not going to say, hey, Tom, go get me a soda. Here's my card. And, go to the corporate, whatever. I'm not going to give Tom my phone to do that. I mean, so that sort of thing. So, there's some things to be made there too. But again, if you control the phone, if the corporation or the company, I should say, the end user, let's say, not the user, but the end user controls the phone, they can also dictate to some level.
You could require they use biometric or a PIN to open
Exactly
that phone. And for anybody listening, if you're like my wife and other people I know that don't do that, you're doing all your banking, you're doing all these other things. I mean, let alone what that exposes with that credential. Make sure you lock down your phone. I mean,
Well,
it's
interesting. I was just doing a joint call with one of my colleagues from our larger company, and they're using a mobile solution that utilizes some Farpointe readers. And the security guards were told to put these credentials on their mobile phone so that they could do their job. And not a single one of them wanted to put the credential on their personal phones. So it's a part of a university. So the university went out and bought burner phones because they're always on the university Wi-Fi network. So that's how they solved that issue. Okay. Or actually, it's a Bluetooth. They don't even need to be in the Wi-Fi network. All they got to do is have active Bluetooth. But that's how they did it. So they bought them cheap burner phones, and that's how they're, their credentials, because the security guards did not want those credentials on their personal phones.
That does bring up not that particularly, but the ability to glean off the biometrics on the hand device, on the phone, is another benefit, I think, of mobile, is to be able to do that. I mean, if you think about it, if you went out and you put an expensive biometric piece, on your front door, fingerprint, could be any PIN or even facial recognition. These are expensive devices, and if everybody's already carrying them around in there, or at least the ability to some semblance of utilization, then again, that could just an added boon to the security. Although I'll be honest with you, moving forward, I think in this world that we live in, this hackable world that we live in, so to speak, or where we're always under some form of threat. On the perimeter of any building, I'd say always put a combo keypad, because you just never know.
Regardless of the card technology.
Think about it. You got Deathfire EV3, hell knows, the newest, latest. At least if it gets hacked, you can always fall back on a multi-tier authentication.
Especially if you're using your credential as a badge, okay? Yeah. What happens if it falls off of my lanyard, okay? And they see that I work for XYZ company. It doesn't matter how secure that credential is, it's now in somebody else's hand. So you put that combo keypad out there, and it just puts up another barrier to them.
And if you negate,
factor authentication, something you have, something you know.
And if you negate the risk at the perimeter, at least you can fall back, at least to some degree, on some vigilance on the inside that, people are going to at least, hey, who the hell is this guy? Who the heck is this guy? So, that sort of thing. But really, again, in the day and age we live in, with, hacks happen every day. Again, if you're going to invest, put a combo keypad on the perimeter every time.
Two-factor authentication is
always, again, it's
great in all walks of life. When we talk about cybersecurity, I mean, I was listening to a podcast, Lex Friedman, if you've ever listened to him, and he's a MIT guy, and very, very technical, some of his guests, and he had a cybersecurity expert on, and she threw a number out that it reduced people that use two-factor authentication for their logins. I think it reduced it 96%. Wow. The chance that they could be hacked.
That's powerful.
You know what's crazy though? But you know what's crazy? If you suggest it's funny. Like if you suggest two-tier authentication at least in a commercial setting to some people, gosh, they get so funny. They're like, oh my God, the employees are going to revolt. They're going to start propping the door and everything. And I'm thinking, well, security is everybody's concern. Really? Just for what? I mean, it probably takes less than 2 seconds to put in a 4-digit PIN. And yet, like you just said, but the coincidence, the upgrade of is so much better. I mean, can you imagine telling people, hey, listen, from now on, when you go to take money out of the ATM, you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about that. You can throw any card, throw your any card in there, it's gonna be fine. Throw your library card in there, and again, people get all worried about it when it has something that is important to them. But I think security at work is as important that it should be a requirement, to be honest with you. But again, certainly negate a lot of the problems that we're having in terms of,
change is hard
vulnerability.
for humans. Even
It
small
is,
change.
or inconvenience. My God, well, it's funny you say that, Josh, because everything we're hearing now, user experience, to the point that UX, we've even given it an acronym.
Yes.
UX, right? But to what degree do we allow UX to take over in lieu of security? In terms of making sure that the person going through is the person, and that's where I think is that sometimes we almost get
we've run into that UX objection even by doing a simple transition from prox to smart card. Because think about the read range and the quickness of the response on proximity. You can throw that card in your wallet and hip check the reader going into the door. You can't do that with a smart card. All of a sudden you got to hold it there. You got to get closer. It takes longer. And people are like, oh, this is horrible.
Another reason why people are pushing back on it, right? I mean,
exactly.
Again, it's there are some advantages, lack of security not being one of them for prox. Range, distance, availability of the credential. I mean, think about it, right? It's not, you don't need a encryption key. They're readily available. So
that's part of the choice you have to make as a customer too, is what your priority is. And I was in IT a long time ago, and I remember somebody that I was working with was telling someone in their company, well, I can give you maximum freedom for people to do what they want on the network, or I can completely lock it down and keep everything very safe. I can't really give you both.
That's a perfect example.
And there's some truth to that. I mean, you're going to have to choose, how much freedom versus how much security you would like to have. And I think, that's an example of that. Are you willing to hold that card up to get a strong read? Or do you want convenience? I think it also lends itself to the fact, we talked about the salesperson using the flipper to demonstrate the negative possibilities that could occur moving forward. We don't really ever think as people that the bad thing is going to happen to us. That's something we saw in the news. That's something we saw on Facebook. That was somebody else. That doesn't happen to us. And until it does. And everybody that's ever been in a, God forbid, mass shooting or any of these things that can occur, in that moment, they're realizing that, security is very important. And it's,
bring it back to residential burglar alarms.
Tom and I was going to say,
and all of a sudden 18 houses on that street have alarm systems that didn't have.
Yes.
Before.
Tom and I, we're gonna date ourselves, Josh, but we've been working in this industry for 30 plus years, and we did come up together in the alarm industry many moons ago. And we used to say something to people back in the day. We used to say, everybody out there thinks that bad things happen to everybody else, but to everybody else out there, you are the other guy. Okay, yeah. You are it. So this is why people don't see it, man. Oh my God, it always happens to somebody else until it's you. And you always got, I don't know, maybe we could say that we learned that early on, but we still kind of think that way sometimes, even on the access control side, is that, hey man, I think security is important. I think that while we certainly want to get people through a door efficiently, we still have to look at it from a standpoint of securely, and especially in the world we live in. I mean, come on. You see it on the news every day, somebody a disgruntled employee going back, not a good thing. So, and not to say that an access control system is going to stop them, but even if we could just slow them down a little bit, could maybe save some lives. And I still think that's important. I do.
Well, and that gets into a conversation, Aaron, I've had on here many times, which is that's why a security integrator and consultant can be so very important, because security is a layered approach. Oh, and there's it's never the one thing you're going to do, but you have to think about, what are you concerned about? What are the possibilities? What are you trying to, be prepared for? And then try to have that right balance of efficiency for your business while concerned about, like if you're in Siberia, you're not worried about sunburn,
exactly.
You need to understand your environment and what your risks are and provide that. And so that's why those integrators are so important, and why I don't ever believe that DIY and do it yourself is going to be the predominant thing, especially in commercial security.
As DIY might become a little bit easier, I think it actually helps to build the market for the professional, because the do-it-yourselfer can only get so far. And then there's a realization that I need more than this.
Yeah. Every time I've tried to rebuild an old car, I've understood why I need a mechanic to call. Nothing like trying it to understand that there is, some expertise involved with that. Well, guys, this was a great conversation. I'm really glad you came on. Really appreciate both the partnership and coming on with us today. I think this was hopefully very educational for everybody. I think you gave us a lot of great knowledge, and
Oh, we're
I
happy
do want
to. I mean, anytime you want to have us back, you just let us know if there are other topics we can address.
Great. We'll do that. I will hold you to that. I'll make you regret offering to come back again. I do want to mention we are getting very close to ISC West for anybody that's watching this in the present time. If you happen to remember your booth number, do you want to give everybody that?
18019.
18019. All right.
We're in
so
the
make
front row this year, Josh.
Yeah, you got me beat. Now you are now part of Dormacaba, right? Did that have
Yes,
anything
that
to
Well,
do?
we've been part of Dormacaba for.
It is that affiliation that gets us up in that front row, yes. But we are still going to be showing under Farpointe Data. We still have our Farpointe celebration that we're going to be doing, which for those that come to ISC West, it's legendary. Probably one of the most ubiquitous access control related networking events known to man.
What's great is even though we're part of the Dormacaba booth, we still have our own booth. We're totally segmented from the rest of the parent company. So it's Farpointe Data all the way, and we're really looking forward to it.
Well, Dorm
we
is
got some
wonderful
really neat
too.
integrations with them as well. So
yeah,
it's good to have them there too. So
no, and they seem like they take the approach of enhancement. They try to make you better and let you be who you are. And we see both styles out there. That's definitely one of the examples of that seems to me like a good umbrella to be a part of. I really like the folks over there at Dorma. So make sure you stop by. What was it again? 18019?
18019.
Perfect. Stop by and see Farpointe, and also make sure you stop by booth 2071 and see Qumulex. And thanks again to our guests. Thanks again for Aaron to come here and to bring the real intelligence from Qumulex, to offer the real insight. And I'm just here to ask questions and so forth. But in any case, we'll see everybody at ISC, or else we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Sounds great. So long.
guys, thank you.